The diner was half empty that autumn afternoon, bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun. Outside, motorcycles lined the parking lot like sentinels of steel and chrome, their engines cooling after a long ride. Inside, an elderly man sat alone in a corner booth. His jacket bore faded patches from wars long past, the kind of insignia that once stood for courage, honor, and sacrifice. His trembling hand lifted a chipped coffee cup to his lips as he waited patiently, quietly, for his meal that never seemed to come. His name was Henry Walker, 94 years old, a World War II veteran who had seen both the horror and the beauty of life in its rawest form. But today, he wasn't facing bullets or explosions. He was facing something far colder: disrespect. Before the story continues, if you believe kindness and second chances still matter in this world, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us spread stories that remind the world what humanity truly means. Henry's eyes wandered to the window, catching the reflection of the nurse behind the counter. Her scrubs were a pale blue, her hair tied neatly back, her face lit with the kind of confidence that came from being in control. Her name tag read Amber. She wasn't a nurse at a hospital, not anymore. She worked part-time at the diner while studying to become a registered nurse. To her, the old man sitting at the booth was just another customer, one who probably wouldn't tip much and would take too long to eat. As she approached with his cold coffee and a sarcastic smile, her tone sliced through the quiet air. "Well, if it is Grandpa Hero," she said loudly enough for the other customers to hear. "You planning to save the world again, or just fall asleep over your soup like last time?" A few people looked up, uncomfortable, unsure whether to laugh or look away. Henry didn't reply. His cloudy blue eyes stared into his cup, his wrinkled hands folded neatly on the table. He had endured worse things in life: explosions, hunger, the sound of brothers falling beside him. But something about cruelty delivered so casually, in a place so ordinary, still cut deeper than he expected. Amber continued, giggling with a coworker. "You think he could at least dress decent? That jacket looks older than him." What she didn't realize was that a group of bikers had been watching from a nearby booth. Their black leather jackets gleamed with patches that read Hell's Angels. To many, they were a symbol of danger, rebellion, and raw power. But to Henry, they were just young men, probably the same age he'd been when he first stepped onto a battlefield. One of them, a tall man with sharp eyes and slick-back hair, noticed the veteran's trembling hands and the nurse's mocking smirk. His jaw tightened. He leaned back, watching, saying nothing, not yet. Henry finally tried to speak, his voice soft but firm. "Ma'am, I didn't mean any trouble." Amber laughed, crossing her arms. "Oh, I'm sure you didn't. Maybe next time you can order something you can actually chew." That was when the biker stood up. The entire diner went quiet, the sound of his boots echoing across the tiled floor. Amber froze mid-laugh as his shadow stretched across her. His leather jacket bore the unmistakable symbol, a red and white skull with wings. He placed his hand gently on Henry's shoulder and looked at Amber with a calm but deadly stillness. "You know who this man is?" he asked, his voice low. "Do you have any idea what kind of people you're mocking right now?" Amber swallowed hard but forced a smirk. "Look, it was just a joke." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "A joke," he said softly. "That man fought so people like you could stand here and joke. He watched friends die so you could live free. You owe him more respect than anyone else in this room." The diner fell completely silent. Even the soft hum of the refrigerator seemed to stop. Amber's smile vanished. She took a step back, her confidence draining away under the weight of a truth she hadn't expected. The biker turned to Henry and knelt beside him. "Sir," he said respectfully, "on behalf of everyone here, thank you for your service." Henry's eyes glistened as he tried to smile. "I was just doing my duty, son." "No, sir," the biker said. "You were doing our duty before we were even born." The other bikers stood up one by one, forming a quiet circle around the booth. It wasn't intimidation, it was protection. A moment of unspoken solidarity between generations of men who understood loyalty, sacrifice, and honor. Amber stood frozen, her hands trembling slightly. She had never felt so small, so guilty. The man she mocked so easily had lived through horrors she couldn't even imagine. Her throat tightened as she realized what she'd done. The biker looked back at her one last time. You wanted to make fun of someone. Try walking a mile in his boots first. Amber's eyes filled with tears. She mumbled an apology, barely audible, then hurried to the kitchen. For the first time, she didn't care about looking strong or clever. She just wanted to make it right. A few minutes later, she returned with a fresh cup of coffee, steaming hot, and a piece of pie on the house. She placed them in front of Henry without saying a word, her voice breaking as she whispered, "I'm sorry, sir. Thank you for everything." Henry looked up at her, his eyes soft, forgiving. "It's all right, young lady," he said gently. "Sometimes we forget the price of peace until someone reminds us." Amber nodded, biting her lip to keep from crying. The biker smiled faintly, watching the scene unfold. In that quiet diner, surrounded by the hum of engines outside and the fading sun, something beautiful happened, not just an apology but redemption. As the bikers prepared to leave, they each nodded to Henry in silent respect. The leader paused at the door, turning back with a small grin. "You ever need a ride, old man, you've got brothers out there." Henry chuckled softly. "I'll keep that in mind." Amber stood by the counter, watching them leave, her heart heavy but changed. When she looked back at Henry, he was sipping his coffee, his hands steady now. It wasn't just caffeine warming him, it was dignity restored. For days after that moment, Amber couldn't forget what happened. She started volunteering at a veterans' home on weekends, sitting with men and women who reminded her of Henry, people whose stories deserved to be heard, not ignored. She learned that sometimes the smallest act of cruelty can open the biggest door to compassion, and that the people who look the weakest are often the ones who carried the world on their shoulders once. Months later, Henry passed away peacefully in his sleep. At his funeral, a small group of men in leather jackets arrived quietly, their bikes parked neatly in a row. They stood in the back, hats over their hearts, saying nothing, just paying tribute to a man who had earned their eternal respect. Among them stood Amber, tears streaming down her face, clutching a folded American flag that Henry's family had given her for her kindness in his final days. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "Rest easy, hero. I won't forget again." If this story touched your heart or reminded you of someone brave in your life, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. It helps us continue to bring real, emotional stories that celebrate kindness, respect, and humanity. And before you go, drop a comment below. What would you have done if you were in that diner that day? Because sometimes, silence isn't enough. The world changes when good people choose to stand up.